Welcome back, everyone. We're now moving on to our last session for day one. The last session is a presentation and discussion on women's health by Saumya Khullar, exercise psychologist and physiotherapist at the Sports Authority of India. She worked as a physiotherapist for 4 years in India and the US before joining the Inspire Institute of Sport as an athlete performance health lead. Ms. Khullar is also the co-author of the Female Athlete Health Project by the Inspire Institute of Sport. She's joined by Neha Aggarwal, Head of Partnerships and Communication at Olympic Gold Quest. Ms. Aggarwal was the only female table tennis player to represent India at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. She's a gold medalist at the 2008 Commonwealth Youth Games and has won 3 bronze medals at the Commonwealth Table Tennis Championships. She's previously worked at the United States Olympic Committee, International Table Tennis Federation, and the Women's Sport Foundation, started by tennis legend Billie Jean King. Over to you, Ms. Khullar.
Hi, Yogita and everyone else. Thanks for the introduction. Really excited to be here. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Saumya Khullar, and I am currently working as a physiologist at the Sports Authority of India. Sorry, that's changed over the last few weeks. And right now I'm working as a physiologist primarily with the boxing team. Prior to that, I was working as a physiologist and athlete performance health lead at the Inspire Institute of Sport. And I'm a graduate from Columbia, and I've worked in India and US, and really passionate about women's health, women in sport, which also led me to be a part of the Female Athlete Project that I'm going to be primarily speaking about today, and discussing some of my findings with you all. So thanks for being here, and thanks the Sports Law and Policy Center for inviting me. Of course, we're talking about women's health today, and I will be primarily talking about the topic of women in sport. But before beginning and going deep into the topic and discussing some of the issues around it, I just wanted to take a minute to focus on the bigger picture, which is really when we're talking about women, in general, there are a lot of things that come to mind, which is the concerns around the medical area, the physiological, psychological, and social. And just wanted to highlight that, of course, the focus for today is women in sport, but, it's important to prioritize, what's happening with, the women in our nation and women in general. And to identify that there are still, a lot of lifestyle diseases, a lot of other diseases where, such things are more prevalent in women, and sometimes the treatment is not what they should be deserving, and there are, as a result, poor health outcomes. This is just a survey highlighting how women are at an increased risk of ischemic heart diseases, stroke, higher risk of diabetes. There are women out there who are suffering from microdeficiencies. Iron deficiency, which is anemia, is really a public health issue in India, and as many as 40% of women in the South Asian countries have been diagnosed with anemia. If we look at the graph on the right, just highlighting how with something as we might not think that this is something important, but because they're not getting food, there are high cases of women being underweight, low BMI. There's India is one of the leading countries when it comes to child stunting, which is nothing but a child just being not able to get fed enough. Also wanted to highlight a little bit about the physiological issues, like I mentioned earlier, women being having a low body mass index, being underweight, being classified as anemic, having a low folic acid, having a low vitamin B12. And again, then there is this global issue around menstruation, which is coming up more and more in not just countries like India, but even in US and UK, where athletes and other women are started to talk about it more openly and not just think about it, as a taboo or as like a shush word, and you can't speak about it. There is unfortunately a lot of myths, a lack of knowledge and a lack of awareness. And this is just a snapshot from a paper highlighting that as many as 77% of menstruating girls and women are still using an old cloth and are not aware about or cannot afford, a different or a better menstrual product. High dropout rates from the school, like as many as 23 million. And, and if it's just about school, I can't even, begin to imagine how it might affect an athlete who's trying to participate in sport as well. Also wanted to highlight a couple of psychological, and physical issues, that women might be experiencing, such as sexual violence, injuries and beatings. And lastly, the social issues around dowry and rape. So that's, women's health in, areas that, there is definitely a scope for improvement. And moving on to the topic today, which is women in sport. So I think that this is an absolutely relevant topic, and especially right now when we are seeing such an increase in, the participation rate in women. Just this graph to show how much the participation has increased over the last few centuries. If you look at the early 1900s, there were only 2% of the women participating in Summer Olympic Games, to as many as 44% of the athletes in the last 2016 Rio Olympic Games. So the participation has been increasing, tremendously over the years, and that also sort of highlights how we need to start thinking about more, how it impacts an athlete's performance, and how we can't just, sort of copy paste what's been seen and found in male athlete to a female athlete. So there's a lot of, things that we are yet to discover, how an athlete's health is affecting the performance. And I think that's a huge area that we need to bridge. And if you're talking about female athlete, I think how I look at it is, like a pyramid. And if we have the foundation as solid, so if I know that my athlete is healthy, I know that I can, achieve the key, which is the performance. However, if I know that my athlete is not healthy, or if I'm say doing a few examinations, or based on the signs and symptoms that my athlete is telling me, and I know that the athlete is not healthy, I may not be able to push her to, her true athletic potential. For example, if my athlete, has a low hemoglobin level, I know that she's not able to recover properly. I know that she's missing her periods. These would be the signs that would tell me that, okay, I still need to, work around the base. Let me have a solid foundation. And then when I know my athlete is healthy, that's when I can keep pushing her. Because if I don't have a healthy athlete and I try to push her, it's going to fall right back. And even if I'm able to achieve a good, performance, I may not be able to sustain it if the foundation is not good. So really, I think what we need to focus on is, of course, I have a healthy athlete, but then of course, we're all passionate about sport and we want to see our athletes winning medals. But if the foundation is not good, then I can't, win a medal in 2021 and the next Olympics, and, so on and so forth. So for a long-term athlete career, I think establishing these good habits, ensuring that our athlete is healthy, providing them with basic education, basic resources, is very critical. That, of course, leads me to, the Female Athlete Project, which I was a part of at Inspire Institute of Sport. which was nothing, just, helping athlete with, some of the areas that I've highlighted here. And if I can take you back to what happened, a couple of years ago when we really started thinking about the project, and we thought that, okay, we need to do something about it, was, this one incident where I was just, accompanying the athletes, and they were having an ice bath session, as a part of their recovery protocol. And it was only female athletes with me at that point. And one of them was not using the ice bath, and I just probed a question as, why you're not using it. And then she kept shying away, and she told me, ma'am, I have a stomachache. And then, her other friend winked at me and told me that it's not her stomachache, it's actually that she's on her period. And it was quite surprising. I just thought that why wouldn't she tell me that she's on her period, and why is she shying away and not telling me what's happening? And that just led to more and more discussions around, I started probing questions and sort of, trying to get to know what the athletes are really feeling, or what their knowledge base is when it comes to this topic. And only about time when there was this topic about relative energy deficiency in sport that was, being researched. And that led to just taking more and more education sessions for the athletes, speaking to them about basic female anatomy, telling them, it's not your stomach that's hurting, it's your uterus, that's just contracting and giving you pain. Why do you get periods? What's puberty? What's hormones? Why do you feel a certain way? What are the reasons behind it? Just basic physiology. Very, very fundamental is what we started to cover, and then sort of build on to that. I also want to highlight that a lot of it was also around myth busting. I would find out about these myths that the athletes, had heard about back in their village, how women were still stopped from, entering the house or entering the temple or going in the kitchen, or, so I think it was just trying to make them understand that it's something very, very biological, and it's nothing bad about you having a period. Like it started at that level. And then, I'm very happy and I'm very proud that we were able to, develop that knowledge base and make them comfortable and educate them about importance of a regular period, how they were able to then go and tell their coaches and have a healthy discussion around how they can, best sort of manipulate their training around, their periods, or how they might be feeling around their periods. And just, if I know that there are some athletes out there in the audience, and I just wanted to, speak a little bit about the physiology, because sometimes when we think about periods, we're just thinking that there's just something that's happening in the uterus, and I'm not controlling it in any way, and I don't know what's happening there, and what's the connection. So this slide is sort of just highlighting that everything that's happening in your body is driven by signals and is driven by hormones. And it's not some process that's starting by itself in your uterus. It's actually the signals that are going through your brain. I don't know if you can see my mouse really, but this tiny area in the hypothalamus called the pituitary gland is releasing some hormones. This LH is luteinizing hormone, FSH is follicular stimulating hormones that are reaching your ovaries, and the magic of menstruation and the phases happen. And if you are an athlete who is, say, not eating well, then this area up in your brain, which is the pituitary, a tiny area, is being affected, and hence the whole cycle is stopped. So for example, if an athlete is not getting periods for, say, 3 months at a stretch, we term it as, a hypothalamic amenorrhea. So it's really from your brain that it's stopping the periods. So just to give you a connection of how things work in your body. sorry. And sorry, just going back. So once we are at the ovaries, and what's happening down there with the estrogen and progesterone is really due to the changes in the hormones. So during the first, so this is like a typical 28-day period. Of course, it can be different for different people, as small as a 21-day cycle, or as long as a 40-day cycle. Excuse me, all right. So during the first 14 days of your period is when we have this one hormone called the estrogen, which is really high. And we term it as a follicular phase. So what happens in this follicular phase due to the estrogen is, the athlete may feel that she's very confident, she's very motivated, she's very social, full of pep. She's able to, do high intensity exercises very well. She's able to recover from the sessions very well. So these are the kind of properties that estrogen has, which is able to push the athlete to a different level. It's really called as the anabolic hormone. So you're able to really do those high intensity sessions, strength sessions very well. But on the other hand, if we talk about our second phase, which is the luteal phase with the high progesterone, that's when the athlete will really relaxed. She might have some sleep disturbances. She might even feel bloated. If you're doing strength training during these sessions, it's advised to give a little bit more gap, take more protein during these days. So, just because of a hormone change, these are the kind of changes that you can experience in your body, in your sleep, in your training. And it's only because of a healthy menstrual cycle with the changes in hormones. So then I want to talk about, Then I want to talk about the relative energy deficiency in sport, which is also the topic of Red S. And that's nothing but explaining us the importance of eating the right kind of energy as an athlete. So for example, if I'm an athlete and I need 4,000 calories during the day, so that 4,000 is a mix of my my resting metabolic rate. So if I'm not doing anything, if I'm just lying in the bed, I need a minimum of, for example, 2,500 calories. And I'm also training 2 times a day along with that, which would add another 1,500 calories. Then I estimated, okay, I need 4,000 calories in a day. Now, what happens one day when I wake up, I wake up late, so I miss my breakfast. And so I just go for training. I come back and I see like a banana lying down in my room, and I just eat a banana and then go off to sleep again. I sleep through the lunch. I miss my lunch. I again have a glass of milk before my evening training, and I go for my evening training. I come back. I go for the dinner. I don't like the dinner. I'm one of those skimpy eaters. I don't like the sabzi that's there. And instead of eating more, I only just eat 1 roti and I come back to my room. Now, what's happened is my body needed 4,000 calories in a day. But just because, I woke up late, I didn't like what there was in the mess, I ended up eating less. So for example, I ate only 2,000 calories. Now there's a deficiency of 2,000 calories in my day. I did the same thing, not the day after, but maybe the day after. So 2 or 3 times in a week, I'm doing such a pattern, which is causing this deficiency to increase more and more. So by the end of the week, I'm at a negative of, say, 9,000 calories. And if such a pattern is repeated over and over again, where I needed 4,000 calories, And for some reason or the other, I'm not eating 4,000, but I'm eating fewer and fewer. Maybe there's a deficit of only 500 in a day. Maybe there's a deficit of 2,000 in a day. So if there is a relative energy deficiency happening for a female athlete or even a male athlete, what we describe that as relative energy deficiency in sport. So these two pictures that you see here, one of them, the one on the left, is basically highlighting all of the areas, all of the systems in the body that would be affected by something, that I just described. If you're not, and this concept was earlier known to be a female athlete triad. So for example, if I'm not eating well, what that would cause is my periods to get missed. And the third thing would be my bones to get affected. And we only knew this as a triad. But recently, it has been known to cause so many other issues in the body. For example, our immunity might go low. If I'm not eating well, I'm at an increased risk of upper respiratory tract infections. My athlete will have more cough, more sore throat, gastrointestinal issues, more of constipation and bloating, cardiovascular issues, not able to push, easily short of breath, growth and development, how we saw about, child stunting, hematological. If I'm not eating well, my iron level will be low, things like that. And on the right side, we see this graph of how a simple concept of eating less is affecting my athlete's performance in so many different ways. So a decreased endurance performance because I don't have any iron in my body, an increased injury risk, a decreased training response. A lot of time, how we train is based on what we are eating. So if I'm not eating, I'm not getting the right response. If I'm doing a lot of strength training, but there is very little protein in my diet, I will not be able to see the same kind of changes in my body. So what you're eating is directly affecting your training and hence your performance. Sorry. All right, so the findings from our project. So where we did a couple of biochemical analysis, and this is a slide to just highlight how many of our female athletes, when we plotted them against the male athletes of the same age, had iron deficiency, were anemic. A lot of them had deficiencies of vitamin D and other minerals such as sodium, magnesium, vitamin B12. A part of the project was also, of course, was a big area was educating the athletes around menstruation, but also a big part was educating them about the importance of regular periods. Because before we really started talking about the project, a lot of athletes were under the misconception that, okay, agar mera period nahi aaya, then it's good because I don't have to go through all that hassle and all that pain. Breaking that thought process was very important because they were associating not getting a period with something good, something convenient. But they had to know that not getting a period, maybe once or twice, might still be okay. But not getting a period 3 or more times is an absolute no, because that's absolutely compromising your bone health and a lot of other systems that we just discussed. So all the athletes, we had almost 50% of our athletes there were female athletes. So, we had about 50 to 60 athletes at any point. And when we started tracking the periods, it was, it was a good achievement of having to bring down the prevalence of the athletes that were missing periods. So here is just the data for, for tracking their periods just over 2 years and, how the prevalence was going down. Another thing that we did was weight tracking. And this was really being, not reactive, but really being proactive and trying to identify if any of my athlete is at risk of low energy availability. It was all the more tricky because most of my athletes were weight category athletes, so we had to, be aware of their weight anyhow. All of them had like a target weight, the category that they were playing at. Of course, for an athlete that is adolescent, she's growing up, you want the weight to healthily increase and not, plateau. So this is an athlete who was growing up, so you wanted her weight to increase. But if there is an athlete whose weight is sort of falling down and not picking up, that's just a red flag that the athlete might be going into a low energy availability. And that's when you start talking to the athlete, maybe start talking to her about how she's feeling, how she's recovering, how she's sleeping. Is she tracking her periods? All of those questions. Are the periods normal? And a lot of what we did was system driven. We had processes around everything, be it menstrual tracking at the end of the month. I was collecting the dates from each and every athlete. We were closely tracking what is the pattern for each athlete. Of course, that required, a lot of time and energy. We were tracking how an athlete is maybe delaying her period or it's coming sooner, and how that is, affecting her other wellness scores that we were managing. So through this process, every month we were doing the menstrual tracking. The weight tracking was happening every week. We were also doing wellness questionnaires with them every morning. Along with that, we were using a few questionnaires. One of them is called Low Energy Availability in Females Questionnaire, which highlights questions around gastrointestinal system, highlights questions around injury, highlights questions around menstrual disturbances or menstrual history. And with the help of all of these systems and all of these data, we were able to have like a bigger picture of what's happening in our athlete's body, and then correlate to other data that we had from, say, the physio team or, the SNC or the tests that we were doing, and correlating them with the performance. And lastly, I would just like to talk about, some of the directions that I would like to suggest. And I think the big one here would be education. I know a lot of it can sometimes get complicated for the athletes, but really starting very small, as simple as, what is periods, and that it is absolutely healthy. We had athletes at the institute who were, say, 13 or 14, had not reached had their menarche, which is, when you begin your periods. And surprisingly, they had never had a discussion about it with, either their mother or friends, and they had no idea. And I'm happy they were in the environment where we could educate the athlete about it. So let them know, not let them think that, okay, when they get their period for the first time, it's some sort of a problem that they have experienced. Let them know it's normal. Talk about it to the athletes, educate them, tell them that missing periods is not healthy. It is a sign that there is something not right with your body, because when there is something not right, what the body does is goes into a survival mode, and it doesn't want to shut your cardiovascular system or your respiratory system. It shuts your reproductive system, because it knows that, okay, probably at this age, you don't need the system. But as a result of those hormones and everything that, that's happening in the body, there is a dysregulation. And for example, if you're not getting enough estrogen, your bone is really compromised, because it helps in bone resorption, and your bone health really goes bad, which might be okay in a short term, but long-term consequences, do not look good. Screen your athletes. It doesn't have to be any complicated screening. It can just be, if you're able to check the weight, or just verbally ask your athlete, speak to her, ask her to start tracking her periods. Try and get her some help if her periods are not regular. Maybe if it could be related to a low energy availability, connect her to a nutritionist, connect her to a physiologist. Maybe it's something more clinical, connect her to a gynecologist. And then I think with a lot of these things, we will be able to move towards an improving health of the athlete, which will, of course, involve a lot of other areas. If possible, go and get your athlete checked, especially if it's a vegetarian athlete and someone who complains of a heavy menstrual bleeding. Maybe she is at risk of anemia. Maybe they have a low vitamin D if your athlete keeps getting sick very often. So screen them, make sure that your athlete is healthy. And I think all of those, doing the basics right, will really help us improving the performance. Like I said, speak to your athletes about menstruation. This is a topic I can speak hours and hours about, but just really just feeding the idea, letting your athletes know that you're comfortable with comfortable talking about it. Or if you don't have the information, you can connect them with someone who does. Educate the athletes, educate their parents. Maybe they also have some myths which really don't have any grounds, and breaking them, educating the coaches, telling them that every athlete is different. They can't compare an athlete A who never complains about her period, she's absolutely fine, she can train through it, to a different athlete who is probably raising concerns about her period. Every girl is different. How her hormones will fluctuate is different. So let's not compare athletes. Everyone's different. So a lot of awareness amongst the practitioners is also required. And I think this is still a topic that we're finding out about, more every day, and a lot of research is still required. We still don't know what are the factors truly affecting the performance of a woman or performance of a female athlete. So, encourage people to just find out themselves and, really try and research the topic, because I think there's a lot of things we can still find. And lastly, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Kevin Kayo, who, I worked with at IIS and was, involved in the project with me, JSW Sports, and really the athletes who were so keen on learning and made this project a success. Thank you very much. Has any questions, or I know me and Neha would like to chat with you all.
Thanks, Saumya. Now over to you and Neha to continue the discussion.
Thanks, Saumya, for that very detailed information about, a topic that is hardly spoken about, a topic which is something so natural happening in our bodies to all the women, and is still such a heavy taboo topic. It affects all women, young girls and women, at a very basic level. And when the woman is an athlete, I at least I will be talking from my experience that because of the lack of education and because the topic is such a taboo topic, it definitely at the end of the day affects performance. So just wanted to start by continuing on what you said at the end of your presentation, that definitely check if your athlete is a vegetarian and is anemic. Does that athlete need help or not? And I want to tell you all that I'm a vegetarian and anemic. So during when I was around 17, 18, and in fact at the peak of my career, in the regular tests, we found out the iron levels were low. But at that time, we just referred to a doctor who said, okay, take iron tablets and you should be okay. And I feel that's the problem, right? Because referring to the right doctor, referring to whom, and for the athletes, for the coaches, for the parents to know that this is not right. It could be something related to menstruation, the issues. Do we need to consult somebody, an expert in this field? So really, because this conversation was very uncomfortable with my coach, with my parents, at that time we did not have many support staff anyway. So because it was such a taboo topic, I was never really aware what exactly is happening, what am I supposed to do on the days when I'm having my period, on the days before I'm having mood swings, things like that. Simple things like do I need to do a certain sort of a workout during my periods or not. All of that just remained a mystery always, and me and my other team members would just learn and grow as along, and never got any expert advice. So and I'm happy that with the advent of sports science and the data and the research that's now come along in India as well, there's a lot of information coming in regarding menstrual health and connected and its connection to athletic performance. But again, with very, very few athletes, and it has to decimate to the grassroots level. Saumya, I really want you to break it down into a very simple way, that uh, the direct connection of having a good menstrual cycle to athletic performance. You mentioned it also affects your bone health, but is there something that the athletes at a very junior level, from the junior level, say when their periods are on set, that should they be thinking about this, since which age, and uh, what sort of importance this needs to be given when you're seriously playing sport, trying to play for India at the Olympics, say?
Um, yeah, you covered a couple of great points there, Neha. So I think when it comes to periods, or when it comes to menstruation, um, as opposed to thinking it's of something which will directly impact my performance, that will not help. But I look at it as just a vital sign. When you go to see a doctor, they will check your they will check your heart rate, they will check your blood pressure. And similarly, for a female athlete to have a healthy menstruation, or for anyone for that matter, is just a sign that you're healthy. And if you are healthy, then you don't have to worry about this, and you can, focus on your sport and excel on your sport. But a lot of times, a lack of periods is associated with something called a low energy availability. And it's not only affecting your, reproductive system, your menstruation, but also affecting a lot of other things. So I don't want the athlete to just, really obsess about their period. Just make sure that they are regular, and just the sign that they are regular means that a lot of other systems in my body are also doing fine. I'm able to I'm able to train well. If then I have an issue with my throat, then I can get it checked by a doctor. But I think just a basis of getting a regular menstrual gives a sign of so many other things just going well in your body. And if I'm not eating well, that's the first sign that will be affected. So it's really just a cue for the practitioners to pick up that something is not going right, and just screening that. Either you're using, so what we did at IIS was, I literally just printed out like a yearly calendar on an A4 size sheet, and every athlete had, the printout stuck on their cupboards in the hostel room, and they would just circle the dates that they got periods. Something as simple as that they can do, which is only implying that my athlete is healthy. Because if my athlete did not have a period, it could have effects on her performance as well. So simple screening tool that way. I also wanted to highlight, this one thing that you mentioned about being a vegetarian athlete. I think sometimes with a vegetarian athlete, we have to give, iron supplements, sadly, because a lot of plant protein has non-heme iron, which is not absorbed well. So you have to, depend on other things. But if it's a non-vegetarian athlete, please encourage that they get it from their food. We don't just want the athlete to think that, okay, I can just take pills. Encourage them that they need to eat the right food so that they're not deficient in iron. So that's just something I wanted to mention.
Sure. Saumya, you stressed on tracking the periods and the traditional way. Would you have suggestions on, say, any app that the athletes can use to make their lives easier, to be just logging in? I know, I mean, if you have an iPhone, you can definitely do it in that. But any apps
Yeah.
recommendations from your side?
I think there are so many different ones on Apple and Android. The one that I'm familiar with is called Flow, and all you have to put is just the start date of your period, and it predicts your cycle. It also tells you different phases, and tells you how far away are you from your period, what is your cycle length like. So really, any tool, if an athlete has a phone and wants to use her app, or really go like simple pen and paper and just write it down in your diary.
Yeah, yeah. I, I think the other aspect that we all should be talking about is the ecosystem of a female athlete, right? Firstly, the athletes themselves aren't aware of simple things like what menstruation is like, and like you mentioned, the direct connection in the long run to athletic performance, but also the coaches, right? Say other support staff. If there are men all around, right, it's very, very hard to be communicating on this, because being a female athlete, maybe you're just not comfortable, you don't get the same vibe from the male coaches and the male support staff to be communicating on this. And personally, I've felt that many, many times, more so with foreign coaches who would compare you directly to athletes who are the athletes from other countries, on, hey, if they are able to manage the pain, if they're not taking any off sessions, why do our Indian athletes need to sort of take off sessions, or aren't able to manage all these things? And many a times coaches would just get angry by the fact that, oh, you're experiencing pain and this is not right, you need to train. So it's also then mentally how it affects you, during those days, that if you're not able to establish a direct connection with your team on such an important topic, it will definitely over the years impact firstly your health, and in a way your athletic performance. So I believe, like you rightly said in your session, education is the key. And I wanted to also ask you that, have there been any other researches where the coaches, or say the team members of the athlete, have been involved in helping the athletes overcome such issues, or firstly talking to athletes about it? Are there any examples from outside or in your career that you've experienced and would like to share?
Yeah, I think there are different programs being run in countries such as Australia, or even UK. In UK, they have this project which was started by a physiologist herself called Smart Her, where they were, it was a group of practitioners really just, really encouraging and supporting this topic. They were talking about menstruation, they were talking about breast health, they were talking about just topics that would affect, a female athlete. So there are definitely programs like that being run, in different, institutes around the world. But I think it's just about educating just the practitioners here as well. And about the thing that you touched earlier upon, being, this level of discomfort when talking to a foreign coaches, or a lack of their maybe understanding. If I'm not wrong, I'm sorry if I am, but about the Indian females, or a lack of knowledge. I think there could be two reasons for that. First, I would like to highlight that every athlete would experience it differently. And say if you are a vegetarian athlete with a heavy menstrual bleeding, highly likely that you will, of course, be losing a lot of blood, but you'll also feel very tired, and you will also feel very weak. So we need to understand what is the physiology, what are the other factors that are affecting her period. A lot of times what happens is There are two types of menstrual cycle. There is one that is ovulatory, where you have the egg and there's ovulation and you have a normal period. The other times there is also an anovulatory cycle, where there is no egg, there is no fertilization, and you have a period, but the period that you have that time, and sometimes referred to as polycystic ovaries, is what will give you more pain. So identifying what, and there are different kind of tests you can do to know if you had an ovulatory or anovulatory cycle. So there's so many things that can affect it. And the second thing that I wanted to just sort of highlight, I've read there have been surveys that have been done, and very few percentage, I think maybe less than 1% of female athletes in India would be using oral contraception, but it is so common in the countries in the West. And there, the athlete is on a contraceptive pill. Of course, the coach, will not know about her discomfort because she's not getting a period. So, he's probably not even aware of something that is happening. But a lot of Indian women, on the other hand, are not taking an oral contraceptive pill or are not aware of this, the system of, where you can manipulate your hormones. A lot of our Indian athletes are not doing it. But the Western athletes, on the other hand, are taking pills. They're not even getting periods. And if at all, they have bleeding, it's not a menstrual cycle. That's something that is a withdrawal bleeding. That's not a true period. You will not get pain during that time. So I think this difference in culture could also be a factor, where an Indian athlete who's having a healthy period, maybe from a vegetarian background, will experience symptoms so different than a Western athlete who's on a non-vegetarian diet, is on oral contraceptive. So, I can sort of understand how the coach's perception would be so different.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Great, insights on this. And definitely it's a very culturally ingrained thing because as a society, we're just not comfortable talking about menstruation. And in fact, just using the word period is such a big taboo. I remember we would, as athletes ourselves and coaches, everyone would just say, oh, ladies problem ho raha hai. Oh, just, and firstly, we need to realize it's not a problem.
Yeah.
So much negativity, surrounded by it. Till now, I see athletes not being comfortable talking about it, coaches not being comfortable talking to athletes about it. And definitely education is the first step, where we can at least start having conversations and bring that change. But Saumya, I really, want, say, if there are athletes and coaches in the session right now, and I want them to, go home with simple things which I, at least as an athlete, was not aware, right? Simple things like, can I do certain exercises or not? We were always confused whether can we do our ab workout, right? And say, can we do our ab workout on the first day and say do it on the second or the third day? Or some would, just do it on the first, not do it on the first day, second and third day, and start from the fourth day, right? And everybody had their own way to do things like that. Can you lift weights? Right, that's, I think till now I am not clear that do you lift on your period or not, especially on your first 2-3 days. Things like can you do endurance training? Can you do a 45-minute session or not? I remember once we had to do this 45-minute endurance training, and I was on the first day of my period, and I felt so exhausted. I was able to do it. I felt exhausted. My only way to overcome that was to drink more nimbu pani, have more bananas, and try to recover. So, basic things like, first, I want to ask you about exercises, and second, I want to ask you about the food that one can take, because all of us were just say, okay, you're on your period, maybe have more bananas, or maybe have some chocolates, or just have more boiled potato, so that your carb intake is more. But what is the right thing to do on these two aspects, exercise and food?
Sure. So I think about the exercise, it's really, really individual. I might be someone there are athletes out there, like, let's not talk about me. There are Olympic athletes out there actually, who've done so well and, won a medal on the first day of their period. So it's really, really individual. When it comes about strength training, yes, you can do it. If your body allows you to do it, listen to your body. If you want to go, maybe not, you may not be able to hit your PR if you're someone who's not been training in her periods, but if your body feels okay, go do it. There is no like, okay, no, you can't do strength training. I don't think there's anything like that. If your body allows you to do it, you can do it. Same goes for the endurance training. A lot of time, and you brought up a good point, Neha. A lot of these are really, processes that take energy. And hence, if you have low energy, these processes don't happen. So because they're really, energy consuming processes, you might feel really drained out. And, eating food that are rich in carbohydrates is really excellent. But at the same time, sorry, I will complete one more point here before jumping to nutrition. I think the only kind of thing that is not recommended to do, even when it comes to exercises or even yoga poses, are the inverted poses, because that can really put a lot of pressure on your uterus and sometimes cause even things like hemorrhage and things like that. So don't do an inverted pose where you're doing like a headstand during your period. But if you want to go for a walk, if you want to jog, if you want to do strength training, brisk walking, yoga, whatever your thing is, you can do it as far as your body allows you to do it. And I sometimes tell my athletes as well that I understand you're very motivated and you're very driven athlete, but if your body is asking you not to and you miss one session, that's not the end of the world. Like, don't break yourself doing it. And I think it's fine from me coming, but the coach having the same thought process is very important, because, I can say it, but when it comes from the coaches, the value is like 100x better. So the coaches need to know that as well.
Yeah. I just want to add here that I think why this comes into an athlete's mind is because you're always constantly thinking that what if I have to play my tournament on my period day. So I need to be mentally ready, and I need to be mentally ready to feel exhausted and yet perform at my absolute best during that competition. So I think that dilemma is something which at least for me, that was always there, and I made sure that I miss as less sessions that when it was absolutely necessary I would miss. But otherwise you're always thinking that, oh, what if you have to play a competition on that. So I think that dilemma is there, and maybe if we can address it by the right sort of nutrition and the right sort of other protocols that we need to take in mind, like tracking and knowing, that dilemma for an athlete can be solved.
Absolutely. And there comes the point of tracking. If you don't know that when your period falls in the last week of the month and you're going for competition and totally oblivious of the fact that you are going to be on your period, you just, you might just screw it up. So track it so you know. Second thing is, I think absolutely being prepared is one reason. So there might be athletes who are really struggling with one thing, and it might be related to them not eating correctly. Their hormones are a little bit haywire, which is again because they're not eating properly. Anemia, a lot of things just add to your symptoms. So, fixing this. On the other hand, if you have an athlete who, has a clinical issue for the reason that she has a lot of pain, might be a good option to consult a gynecologist if there is a need to, tweak the dates a little bit so that she's able to compete. In my experience, a lot of time when we've been able to just, fix, the basic things like, getting the iron right, getting the energy right, like not even talking about the different macronutrients. If an athlete is eating well, if, coming on to the nutrition part, a lot of the symptoms that we experience during the periods are a result of inflammation. So period is nothing but an inflammatory process. And anti-inflammatory foods, encouraging the athlete to not eat processed food. She might crave for, a pizza or a burger or Maggie or, some unhealthy chips or biscuits during her premenstrual phase. So encouraging the athlete not to take those processed food, but it really, include raw fruits and vegetables and hydrate yourself during that premenstrual phase so that you can manage the symptoms of inflammation in your, during your periods, and including anti-inflammatory foods like flax seeds or pumpkin seeds, plums and peaches, garlic and onions. Some people also like to sip on green tea. So any anti-inflammatory foods that you can take during your periods is good. Try and move. Movement is good. And during and before your periods, please encourage your athlete not to take any processed food. Not take any processed food and hydrate. During your periods, lots of raw fruits and vegetables, anti-inflammatory food. Make sure your athletes, magnesium, zinc, iron, omega-3, all of these are in good levels, because if they are not in good levels, it can really aggravate the symptoms. So I think these might be some helpful, things that someone can just incorporate. Of course, tracking, educate, but little modifications around what they've been eating. If they ate pizza and, a glass of wine or beer, they might experience pain when they really start their period 2 days after. But if there's someone who's eating like healthy salads and hydrating, their symptoms might be less. And this is what I've observed with the athletes as well. Of course, cut the alcohol part.
Well, I hope they're not eating pizza.
They crave it, they crave it. They want to go and have a burger. And that's just normal in a premenstrual phase. You crave that sweet, salty food.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just want to also touch on I briefly touched on the psychological aspect that, because as athletes, you're always so focused, you live in a bubble, and most of the times, athletes do what coaches tell them to do, and the support staff, in case they have, and not really know much about these things, and not want to venture out and explore further about it. You just focus so much that you tend to think that if I am not having a regular menstrual cycle, if I'm feeling drained out, it's very normal. It's okay, and that's how it is. That's how my body is, and I just need to do it, and I need to go on with my session or go on with the tournament and get it done, because you're so committed, you're so driven to be able to get through that session, because your more important goal is to hit that right shot and to perform that exercise and do it really well. But I am now slowly getting to understand that we need to address these issues as athletes, and hopefully I hope that the equation between athletes and coaches change, that the coaches are also able to notice a dip in say mood, or a change in mood, or a dip in energy levels, and or any other behavioral change in an athlete, and talk to them about it, and not ignore any symptoms or anything that causes them distressed, or they're not at ease. So that's something which needs to be changed, and at least as women athletes, we are the ones who need to bring that out. And in today's era, there's help available, and I think we all must take and seek help, and not think that, okay, let's just stay focused, and jo hoga ho jayega, I need to perform. I mean, it gives you enormous level of mental tenacity, makes you mentally very strong, but you just don't know the effects of ignoring any problems in your menstrual health in the long run. thus it's important to address those issues.
Absolutely. I think we are still in the stages of finding out how it could affect in the long term, but just looking at that picture of how it affects different systems is definitely something to highlight. And I totally agree. Yeah. And if you're able to perform at your peak, you're able to do that one session and you're able to give your 100%. We don't know if you'll be able to sustain that over a period of time. To be able to do that in a healthy manner, I think fixing the issue, if there is something related to your health, would be important, so that you reach the peak and you have a long athletic career. To have a long athletic career, we need to have the basis right. And yeah.
No, I had a time where I recall that it was the finals and of one of the national championships, national ranking tournaments, and I was playing in two categories, the youth and the women's. And the semifinals and finals for both the events was on the same day, and I was on the first day of my period, and I won it. I won the double crown, and it gave me a lot of power and strength. That, oh my God, that was fantastic to do it on the first day of your period. And there was this one tournament on the other hand that I was in enormous pain. I still went through it, and I was just distracted. I have to admit, I was distracted, and I think I lost in the quarterfinals in that tournament. So there is no connection, like you rightly said, and we need to address these issues as athletes, coaches, and support staff, if there are any with athletes.
Yes.
I think there are questions.
If there are any questions from the audience, me and Neha are welcome to take them.
I think, Saumya, there's a question I can see in the Q&A.
Q&A, yeah.
Technical. I can read it out for you. Maybe you can answer that. How can the concept of cycle syncing with respect to customized training as per cycle exist within a team environment where everyone is at a different point in their cycle?
That's a very good question. I think this definitely requires a lot of manpower and hours of working. It's very tricky to do it in a team sport, but I think it's just sometimes just helpful to classify your athletes in different phases. And also, when we're talking about cycling the different athletes, the research in this area is really just, really beginning to appear. So we can't base, 100% of our money on what's, being told, because a lot of more research has to be done. And we don't know what's out there is relevant for Indian athletes or not. That being said, I think one practical way could be to divide your athletes into different phases, like I mentioned. So a follicular phase and a luteal phase. And really just seeing how your athletes are responding. Maybe throughout the menstrual cycle, your athletes are doing well, except for one or two who are maybe experiencing some sleep disturbances or some recovery issues, which can be dealt with separately. But overall, I think we can really just encourage and treat the athletes, or train the athletes as a group. Except for a few that have been highlighting. And if you want to, train them specifically, I think that requires a lot of manpower. And I've personally, not been in the situation where we were doing it individual, but you can on the basis of the menstrual cycle. So I'm not sure if I was able to answer the question, because it's really tricky to do it.
Yeah.
And
just one more thought on this, that maybe you can use the off season as one of those phase where the coaches along with the physiologist can possibly experiment with this, track because in an off session you can really divide the load that you're an athlete and your team, and based on like what you've mentioned, Saumya, phase them and see, say if you have a 3-month off season, phase it that way, and possibly try to get data around it so that um, there could
Yeah,
be some information and improvement in performance.
absolutely. Um, there's another one. Tampons are probably much better suited to use in women who have menstrual cups. I think it really depends on athlete preferences as well. Some of the athletes who I've, worked with have preferred a menstrual cup over a tampon. So it really is, their individual preference. The important thing here is maintaining the hygiene and hygiene around it. If you're using a pad, make sure to not wear it for too long, and days you haven't changed it. 6 to 8 hours is what I tell the athletes to change it. If you're any sort of product you're using, it's not going to affect your performance. You just need to make sure you're using it in the correct way, you're disposing it in the correct way, and that's fine. Whatever you're comfortable with, you use it. But as far as you're changing and you're maintaining hygiene around it. And some of the athletes, like I mentioned, I worked with, were combat sports, and sometimes they, the body postures changed like really, and they thought that cup was better because they felt not comfortable in a pad. So it really depends on the athlete. As far as you're maintaining hygiene, I did not have a preference towards them using one or the other. It really depended on them. Would having more female, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to add that although there are always you have your own preference, but again, culturally and in terms of the information and education on the various products that are available in the market is also very limited. I think in the last few years, information on tampons and a cup is now prevalent, and but till now, a lot of athletes would, as far as I know,
Yeah,
using a sanitary pad. But I mean, now that I look back, maybe menstrual cup would be better, because one of the main reasons was that disposing was an issue, right?
yeah,
You're playing in remote areas, or you're playing together as a team, and you want to take a break, go to the bathroom, and change in between a training session where you're with men, both boys and girls are playing together. It's awkward if disposal is not well available. Again, that's a point of concern. So I would just add that maybe a cup or a tampon would have been better.
yeah,
But still, the knowledge, information on tampons and cups is not as much as it should be, and how much it is in say in Europe or in the US.
yeah. Yeah. Or even in Indian urban cities, like I could see my athletes' jaw dropped when I took out a tampon in front of them, or I showed them things. And it's really about them spreading the message. Now they are telling their sisters or their mothers back in their village, and it's really about spreading the knowledge. So I'm happy to see that it's going somewhere. There are a couple of questions. I'll quickly jump to the next one. Would having more female coaches in the system help improving the awareness? Any thoughts on the examples? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if we ourselves are shy of talking, then we can't expect the male coaches to come and start talking to the athletes about it. So I think it's really encouraged. It's really encouraging for a female athlete to empower and educate the athletes that way. So I would totally agree.
And for firstly, having enough female coaches in the system, and
Yeah,
coaches having the knowledge as well.
knowledge.
Yeah, you can't always expect that the female coaches would also be knowing all that what we have been discussing, because these sometimes, or not sometimes, many of the times athletes themselves don't know. So it's
Yeah.
all about education and awareness. But definitely, yes, having more female coaches would certainly help a lot.
As Indian athletes are more malnourished, should eggs become the most important part of a diet in case we need to produce more female athletes? I think eggs are important. They are a good source of protein, but I think for me, it's a lot of other macronutrients that we need to look at as well. It's there are vegetarian athletes out there who are also performing at, the highest level. Eggs are important because, they're a good source of protein and, other micronutrients and vitamins such as B12. I wouldn't, really just vouch only for egg. I think nutrition in general is something that needs to be encouraged, with our athletes. And last question I see here is, what kind of systemic effects does menstrual cycle manipulation by female athletes cause? I think that's a great question. If I understand correctly, systemic by manipulation, you mean taking some sort of hormonal pills to change, your cycle date. Of course, that's out of my area of practice, because that's something that a gynecologist would prescribe. But just knowing that if your athlete is someone who's doing that, to resume a normal menstrual cycle, that whole hypothalamic axis that we discussed, hypothalamus, pituitary, hormones going to your uterus, that whole cycle can take again up to 3 to 6 months, or sometimes even 12 months to establish again, because what you're really doing is you're breaking this cycle. So if your athlete is taking it once in a while, is able to resume her periods soon, then I think it's okay. And, if it's, discussed with the gynecologist prior. But if it's something that is taking long time to establish, then yeah, again, it can have long-term effects on your health. So just be wary that once you take it, you disturb the normal axis, and it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to resume your normal, healthy menstrual cycle every 28 days, for example, if you have one. So
I think a lot here also goes back to just managing your period, and firstly, why does an athlete need to make such changes in their menstrual cycle, right? That means they are coming from a prior thought and an experience that there is pain, there are cramps that they're not able to manage, and thus they have anxiety that during their tournament they would need to alter the menstrual cycle if your tournament falls on that day. So I think it again goes back to when you're training, you're being educated, you're being trained to how to manage your period and eliminate and working on those problems of whatever, more pain, more heavy menstrual flow, or different changes in moods and cramping and those things.
Yeah. So definitely something to, keep in mind when you're doing the training, so that if, an athlete is complaining of, signs and symptoms that are not normal, you get them verified so that such a thing does not persist and, is not a problem during the competition time, because if it needs medical intervention, then we should, be able to provide that to the athlete. Are there any other questions by anyone, or Yogita, you think?
Thanks, Saumya. Thanks. Yeah. I think we're good for now. If we have any further questions, we'll direct them to you over chat. So thank you so much for joining us. We really thank you for the wonderful discussion, and it was extremely informative. So this brings us to the end of the first day of the 5th edition of the Sports Law and Policy Symposium. Thank you all for attending. And thank you to all of our speakers for taking the time out and being here with us today. We would like to thank our sponsors again for making this event possible, Sportradar and Dream11.